You love movies, I love movies. That's why we're here, right? But what are the kind of movies that will help us on our journey to being a better filmmaker? The kind that we can look at and analyze and gain some new perspective from. Well, in today's video, I want us to look at a particular kind of filmmaker, and that filmmaker is the writer, director, the authors of the filmmaking world, the ones who have sole authorship, well, in most cases, unless the studio meddles or producers meddle. But anyway, that's a whole nother video. Point being is, in this video, I want us to look at 5 from across the globe, 5 that are not typical. And through that, I think we can take something and gain some true understanding from their style of filmmaking. Without further ado, let's get into it. First up, we're going to check out Bong Joon-ho, Korean filmmaker, a Korean writer-director whom you may be familiar with. Now, his filmography is quite big, about nearly 10 films, some English language films as well. But he is a master of genre blending. He is able to blend the type of genres into a one film that often just seems to work so well. It never really falls flat, which is hard to do. Sometimes you hear the criticism in films about, is it trying to be one kind of genre or is it trying to be this kind of genre? Well, with his filmmaking, he's able to move in between genres, be it a tragedy, be it a drama, be it darkly comic. And he's able to do this in a way that is kind of refreshing. Now, Korean cinema is a whole interesting thing that I think, at some point I will get into, but he is a great example. So, what are the takeaways? The takeaways are, if you're going to do something, be okay with your genre that moves in and out of characters. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the characters kind of dictate the genre. So in the moments, the characters can be comical. In some other moments, characters can be in a dramatic moment. And in other moments, maybe they see themselves as something of an action hero. So within that, you can flow in and out of the genres. He's also well known to be able to use social commentary and wrap it up in a really entertaining way. As homework for you guys to check out would be his sublime, truly amazing film that dealt with the first kind of serial killings, which is Memories of Murder. Something I also failed to mention is that he is particularly great when it comes to blocking and framing. Maybe it's a little something different from our Western perspective, and maybe Korean-wise, they somehow have a little different handle on that. But his frames are always sort of filled and blocked in a really interesting way. And his characters come in and out of frame. What you will find in this film, Memories of Murder, is some really interesting blocking choices. That alone is just going to be worth you checking out, because not only is it a really great story and a compelling story, but the actual visual work of it is just amazing as well. Second film as homework would be Parasite, which is, as we know, the Oscar winner. A great film. Visually, you're going to learn visual storytelling 101. The way in which he composes these frames, composes these scenes, that's a great thing to also sort of study and look at. I don't know what happened to him with Mickey 17. Not that it was a terrible film, but definitely wasn't that good. Snowpiercer, great film. English language film, beautifully done. But who knows? Iranian filmmaker, writer-director, Asghar Farhadi. Now, he may have gained prominence or come onto the scene, even though his filmography is quite extensive, but he came into our sort of view a little bit later. And that is mainly because his sublime film, A Separation. The amazing thing about him is that he handles moral complexity through simple situations. And so his films are not grand and big and showy. You know, they handle simple characters, or at least everyday type of characters, but, you know, unfold into a sort of morally complex situation. His direction is clean and insightful, but it's not showy. And it's something to be gained from that, I believe. You know, he handles his characters with care and empathy. And they're never particularly right or wrong morally. Sometimes it's not as clear of a line. He likes to play within the gray. Key takeaways. Write characters that are morally complex, but don't feel too worried about the actual complexity of the situation. You can find that, you know, our sense of direction and our sense of what's right and wrong within the smallest of scenarios. And I think his characters always show that. Don't be afraid to simplify your scripts and simplify your story and the world that it's in. You know, you can keep it real, but it doesn't have to be grand and epic, let's say. He shows with his characters that small decisions can have kind of irreversible type of consequences. And they tend to snowball. And that's what his writing does. That's what he likes his characters, you know, to have. So a little homework for you guys with films I would like you to check out would be A Separation, the Oscar winner. Now, beautiful film. I mean, exactly handles all the themes we've been talking about and discusses them in sometimes nuance, but also unfolding type of way. You know, his scripts tend to just like unfold beautifully, and the stakes slowly rise through the characters' actions and the characters' complexity and their morality. A Separation, definitely check that out. And then The Salesman. Oh man, it's almost like a thriller. I won't say too much, but check it out. If you want to know how to create a compelling film with little budget, let's say, or small amount of characters and, you know, a very limited amount of locations, then look at him as a filmmaker and look at his films, but definitely look at The Salesman. You know, he's able to do that in such a refreshing, interesting way. Next up, we got Céline Sciamma, French writer-director. Now, Céline is just a great filmmaker. She doesn't have as much films in her filmography as you would expect, but what she's able to have done with the amount of films is just like completely unique and individual to her and to her voice.
What I learned the most is that I loved it. Really, yeah, like if I'm honest.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I loved it, that I knew what I wanted.
She's been seen to often talk about the nature of her writing and her characters, and that a lot of the times it comes from a desire. She's big on this idea that the characters have these desires, or she in turn has this desire to tell this kind of story. Now, she does like to address it from a female POV or point of view, as this is what she relates to and this is what she wants to give light to. She also often, you know, her work is often quite sort of silent, and her characters communicate more with looks and glances and moments that are silent. And that's visual, right? That's beautiful. Like you can see that within characters' work, and sometimes it isn't about all of the dialogue that needs to be exchanged. Sometimes it is about the silence in a look or a turn of the head, you know. So she's great with that. She never rushes to show you or tell you why or how the character's feeling. These things are often described in the looks and the glances. Key takeaways. Restraint can often be a form of communication and clarity in the way you piece together a scene. Sometimes you don't need to fill it with dialogue to communicate. Sometimes you write visually, right? It's often more powerful in some senses that characters have these truly silent moments where they're communicating with body language. Like the other filmmakers, 2 films I would love you to go and see with her would be the brilliant Portrait of a Lady on Fire, an incredible love story set in a sort of olden day time, something where I think she obviously purposely done it that way because women were more repressed in a lot of areas. So there's this sort of beautiful romance that happens, and it's really quite amazingly shot and beautifully done. And all of the themes, the silence that she likes to employ, they're all there. So definitely check that out. Another film from her I would love you to check out would be Girlhood, which is, again, beautifully shot, but offers this sort of younger perspective on teenage girlhood that is quite refreshing. And it's all set in France. And then go back into her library of films because she has some quite amazing work. Next up, Indian filmmaker Satyajit Ray. I have to give credit to one of you guys for this, in that I knew of him, but I never sort of delved into his library of films. And one of you guys mentioned in my comment section about him and that maybe I should look into him or do something on him. And thank you. Thank you for that. Here he is. What a filmmaker. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but what he left is just a body of work that is just interesting and really quite empathetic to the human condition, if you will. He likes to handle simple everyday lives and the internal struggles that we all tend to face. And he casts quite a big empathy over his characters in that he doesn't judge things or situations. He likes them to unfold, like watch lives that are lived in and that slowly start to unfold. As a writer, you know, you don't sense his strong hand in trying to cultivate this moment. It's almost very naturalistic. His direction is quite simple. It doesn't draw attention to itself, and similar to some of the others, but more so, I would say, because you wouldn't necessarily watch him and think, oh man, this film is, you know, all of these films are amazingly shot, but it's the way he handles these characters. I think there's value and there's such a sort of beauty in that. Key takeaways: let the drama unfold. Don't dramatize. He takes situations and he allows the events to unfold. Have a certain amount of empathy for your characters, as much as you might be quick to judge. Don't judge. And normal lives can be just as dramatic if you can find the right kind of situation for them. So definitely a filmmaker worth looking into. He's also a filmmaker that in these modern ages of fast-paced and quick edits and all sorts, similar to a few I've spoken about, he is someone who can remind us about patience and remind us that it's a skill. It's something we can build into our filmmaking and into our scenes and characters. The films I want you to check out as part of your homework would be Putta Panchali, which is one of his most seminal films. If I've pronounced it wrong, I'm sorry. Apologies. It's a great film. It has all of these hallmarks. Everything is done in a way that it just unfolds, but it's so endearing and beautifully done that you are drawn into these lives. So another film I would like you guys to check out would be Charioteer. Just a great little film as well, along the lines of the other film, but this one handles this sort of wife of this newspaper editor. There's this unfolding of what happens between them and the dynamic of their relationship. It's a beautifully made film. I think what you need to do once you watch those is just go back in his catalog and check him out, because it would offer you a whole new interesting perspective.
I had eventually to do the operating myself. because occasionally even a little wobbly pen won't matter if the acting is really very strong. On occasion, of course, you have to have a perfect pan or a perfect track or perfect this, perfect that. But if you have a very strong performance in a certain kind of scene where you feel that the audience won't mind a little jerk here or there, that's why I decided to operate myself for the sake of economy.
Fifth and final filmmaker, writer-director would be Mexican-born Alejandro González Iñárritu. If I've pronounced that a little bit wrong, my apologies. What is it that's quite interesting about him? Well, his ambition. He has a sprawling sensibility when it comes to his characters, and often his films involve quite a lot of characters and an ensemble of people, but there's this sort of very big landscape that he likes to play in, morally as well, for his characters, that is. He bats for the fence, man. He completely tries to go as bold and big as he can, and you kind of got to admire that. No matter whether he sometimes misses with certain things or certain aspects, you got to admire someone who's just bold. So in contrast to the other filmmakers that I'd mentioned, I think having him as the last filmmaker is a good note to end on, because while the others teach you one thing, he will then teach you quite a different thing. I think the key takeaway for him is that he likes to handle the kind of have the psychology and the understanding of the characters almost dictate his narrative. What do I mean by that? Well, if we look at something like Birdman, we can see that the use of a one take throughout the film. Now, some would say it's a novelty, but really it was to really highlight the fact that the main character, the protagonist, was trying to get this play made, but then there's all this pressure that comes with it that he can't escape from. And so having this one take scenario where we're just enveloped into that world and into his POV, it makes sense. So there is that connective tissue between it, that understanding of how to film something in that way. And, if we look at his other English language films like Babel, sprawling cast, again, disjointed with the narrative, with the structure, and his characters in that film were quite disjointed and didn't know what they were doing. There's a reason why he does it. It comes from his characters. His films are often emotionally quite intense, but they are structurally quite bold. The key takeaways would be allow your characters to kind of dictate how you want to film or write the story. So if you want this character to go from A to B, but they themselves are kind of confused, and maybe it does need to be a bit of a Nolan-esque, non-linear thing going on. Who knows? He will at least give you that insight and allow you to see whether that's possible within your story. 2 films for your homework would be, I hate to say it, but his Oscar-winning film, which is Birdman, mainly because it's like a combination of all of his filmmaking instincts into one film, and generally the outcome was done exceptionally well. The craft was great. Obviously, having Chivo Emmanuel Lubezki as your cinematographer doesn't hurt at all, of course. And also acting, the characters were super involved and they felt like they were in a play. That's often when you watch the interviews, that's what you'll see. So Birdman, and then I think his debut, which was a great film, Amérias Pobres. Let's try that again. Amérias Pobres. I think you guys probably can correct me in the comments, but his debut, amazing film. It showed all the raw instincts that he had and that he would later then go on to adopt and improve upon. As a filmmaker, he's generally someone we all kind of watch and anticipate. All right. So we're at the end. I hope you've enjoyed this little look at these writer-directors. I'm thinking of making it something of a series. Maybe looking at another 5 and, keeping with the idea of not being the typical sort of writer-directors that we may know about, but looking broader. So if you like it, definitely let me know. One of the things I think is really such a good takeaway is that, these filmmakers, they're auteurs, they are in the authorship of their own films, which is always, like, for me personally, it's a great thing. And maybe some of you find that there are filmmakers like, I don't know, Fincher, who is able to take stories that are not written by him and create amazing movies. But I've always gravitated towards the auteurs, the writer-directors. These show you how to think like a filmmaker, because they take the story from the seed, the germ, and they write the story. So they put on their writer's hat, and then they go out and then create the story in their directing vision, and then they edit. So it is true, the adage of your film is edited or made three times is true. Being a writer-director, you see that process completely all the way through. Gain something from their understanding. Look at their viewpoints. Look at how their lives also helped give them insight into the type of stories they wanted to tell and the type of filmmakers they are. The way you look at things and your insights help your taste. Your taste help you to become better. So with that being said, I'm gonna get up out of here because we've been shooting this thing, but the light's been going. And I don't want it to go completely dark. So you guys take care. And if you are in the mood for another video, then maybe 7 openings to independent films that will probably help you in crafting a great opening. So, y'all take care. I'll catch you in the next one. And you peace out for now.